Okay, we are live.
That would be fantastic. Much appreciated.
I would myself, but
Maybe that could help.
jump starts on.
It wasn't for today's meeting, it was for the meeting that you had just yesterday. Thank you. Thank you.
The meeting will come to order with a roll call show that all members of the board are present. Our first action item on the agenda is to approve the agenda. I will go ahead and move that we approve the agenda as presented. Do we have a second?
I second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
And I for myself, sorry. Pledge of allegiance. Ms. Stiles, will you please lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now move on to informational reports, starting with a summary of current events from interim superintendent Dr. Steve.
Well, we used to say the 100 days of May, it's now the 1,000 days of May. There's just stuff going on all over the place. We had the kindergarten promotion event last week. We've got 8th grade promotion tomorrow night. We've got high school graduation on Friday. I think it was yesterday, the seniors did the senior walk at McDowell Mountain where they go through the hallways over there. You know, just all that stuff. Finals are underway here at the high school, and all that stuff has come with the end of the year. So it's exciting, busy times.
We'll move on to governing board reports, starting with you, Mrs. Reed.
I just came from the facilities committee, and again, we're making good progress. We got to see different models of what it would look like should McDowell Mountain be consolidated and the middle school be consolidated with high school, what all the grades would look like. So yeah, we're making good progress.
Mr. Sir?
On a personal note, I won't be at even next year. They made some staffing changes with my program falls apart here, so I'll be taking more classes at community college.
And having more time for us.
I was gonna say, there are plenty of volunteer opportunities in all of our schools.
Dr. Barner.
Okay, so, signing night, Miss Wynn and, the Booster Club did a really nice job with the students who are continuing to play sports in, college, really nice. George from the paper, I don't know if he's behind me, he will be doing, I'm sure, an amazing profile on each one of those students. And senior recognition night, Nadia, fantastic job. The Golden Eagle Foundation is so incredible, and I am so looking forward to volunteering my time with them next year. It was really wonderful event, and lots of great scholarships that went to our students. There's one more thing. What else did we do? Oh, Falcon Fiesta. Yep. So yeah, I have been in the one wing where we would put our 7th and 8th graders, and it is beautiful. Like, it really is a nice space. I've been in there because we have been inventorying all of our Falcon Fiesta items. Lots of people have been volunteering for their time, and couldn't be done without Julie Keeney. I'm giving a shout out to Julie Keeney. She would die, but she has been, her and Jenna Van Beek have just been incredible people to organize the event for our seniors and their guests. And I'm looking forward to tomorrow and Friday.
Well, these last couple of hours, I've been reading the minutes
of April 27th and May 10th.
And you did work with Krista to get our legislative priorities submitted to ASBA.
Yeah.
For that.
Well, I would like to find out the ASBA's law conference when, because you can't just be a delegate, you've got to go to a law conference too.
It's on the internet.
Yeah, it should be in
Yeah,
September.
I'm sure it's on the
Yeah,
internet.
it's always September.
Yeah, I know.
For myself, yes, was at senior recognition night. It was a wonderful evening, and many thank yous to the high school administrative staff who really helped pull a lot of those pieces together, and PTO for tabletop decorations, and our culinary students at the high school were the ones who made the just like sandwich roll things and stuff like that they had for the seniors who were there. So that was a great evening, and definitely looking forward to the rest of this week's activities with 8th grade promotion and senior graduation. And then I will be out of town for next week's meeting, so I will be dialing in remotely because we're taking the kids and dogs and we're going to be in Utah for next. Yeah. All right, public comments. We do have 2 public comments this evening. Mrs. Rutgowski, will you please read the public comment statement?
I sure will. Okay. Call to the public. Call to the public. This is the time for the public to comment. Time limits may be allocated on public comment at the discretion of the board president for the board to efficiently complete its business. The board reserves the right to prohibit any comments made in a discourteous or threatening manner. Comments about specific individuals, students, or personnel are discouraged. Personnel issues should be directed to the appropriate staff member or administrator per district policy. Members of the board may not discuss items that are not specifically identified on the agenda. Therefore, pursuant to ARS 38-431, period 01, capital H. Okay. Action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter, responding to any criticism, or scheduling the matter for further consideration and decision at a later date.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, our first public comment is from Cheryl Stiles. Will you please come up to the podium?
Please be careful.
Yeah,
sorry. It's
sorry.
booby trapped.
Normally I would not see something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, faceplant would not be good for me.
As always, 3 minutes. I will give you a warning after the second.
Good evening, Madam President and school board members. Thank you so much for an opportunity to speak this evening. I think, I'm going to probably recap a little first. It was after the February 23rd meeting at FHUSD that the homeowners in the Alago area became aware of a proposal to build potentially up to 155 homes. And how many of you are here this evening that are from the properties? Okay, we have a couple of people, about 10 of you guys here. As the homeowners raised their concerns in an April meeting, we were happy to see that the slide changed to reflect a maximum of 155 homes, but realistically 45 to 47 homes. But yet FHUSD, you guys, were stating multiple times you're not a property developer, you're just selling it, but we're concerned about how you're stating that yet this can be built here. We don't disagree with you, you're free to sell it, and that is totally true. You have a right to sell the property that was deeded back to you since the 70s. As homeowners though, taxpayers, registered voters, and we fund the school district, we're concerned by the FHUSD signaling from the board presentations the number of homes that can be built in Arroyo. Since '87, there have been 4 attempts to put housing in the Arroyo, and each of these have failed, including even a Scottsdale developer, John Connor, who pulled out due to issues with the land. And what I want to talk about is the issues with the land. You know, most folks just say, oh, it's the view, it's the view. Yeah, it is a great view, and yeah, we all did pay premiums to get the property with a view, correct. And we all paid based on the realtors, what they told us that FHUSD was not gonna build on the property. We know that. But there's some other things. We talked about the ecosystem before. The habitat, the numerous protected saguaros. There are actually over 50 saguaros. And right now, you know, we're currently having a problem with the saguaros just keeling over and dying in some areas. The arroyo is actually a wash. It's a protected wash. It's also, the bottom of it, the lower end, is a FEMA floodplain. The elevation changes from 100 feet at the top, we're at like 1,900 feet, but there's a 100-foot drop from the El Lago Cavern intersection down to the bottom of Cavern, and then it goes across. It's actually quite a river runs through it. In fact, one of the homeowners is here who experiences a river run through it when it rains. I'm actually up on the ridge on El Lago.
30 seconds.
We want to just express to you that our concern is, again, there's NPOA regulations which say that R1-10 cannot be subdivided, and also the regulations in the NPOA says no topography can be altered to change the natural drainage of that land. It is a FEMA floodplain, it is a wash, and it is also named multiple times in the Fountain Hills flood plan. We would like to support you guys. We want to help support bond efforts or other funding efforts, and look for alternatives for the property long-term and you guys long-term. Thank you so much. And I have a slope map should anybody want to look at it. 50% is over 20% slope. Thank you, because I would miss that. Thank you. Thank you.
Wireless works.
Okay, and our next public comment is from
Madison, please go that
Oh,
way.
You know how clumsy I am.
No, I don't, but I don't want to find out.
Alright, hi guys. So I'm kind of here for the same reason. I'm a makeup artist who has done a lot of work in the marketing and advertising industry. And with those connections, I've been able to become involved in project development, production, and creative directing. And through that, I've dabbled in PR, helping companies and individuals communicate to their clientele without having a face-to-face. And so I'm hoping that my words here tonight can just be taken as friendly advice, because I see the disconnect in the district and the community. I think that if you ask any of the community members, including Cheryl, she just said they want to help fund the schools, right? They want to give money to public education, because I don't think that anybody wants like an uneducated society. However, the last bond override didn't pass. And I feel confident that I can say that's because the community's lost a little bit of their confidence in the district spending and in the return of their investment through the taxpayer money. One of the things that I think that would really help is just really true spending. You know, this is the money that we're getting, this is exactly where it's going, this is what it's going for. And alongside that, being very genuine with the issues that the district faces, which I know we do a decent job with that. One of the things is being able to get in front of people and tell them that we're doing our due diligence to get money from all of these other places that we have, like the Facilities School Board, the state level, getting repairs done through there whenever and as often as we can. I think that getting in front of the community and saying, this is what we're doing, and these are the needs that we still need from our community, I think that we get a lot of a better response. And then with the sale of the land, I think that coming in right after the bond not passing, it almost feels a little bit like an underhanded way of putting pressure on the community to pass the override. And I think that if instead we came out and we could say, listen, land prices are higher than they've ever been right now, and with this money, we could put in a swimming pool for our students, for our swim team, we could offer these art programs or do these things at our school and really make the school better and grow our district. I think those are things that are really missing. I went to that facilities meeting today and talking about the consolidation. And as much as I know that that's addressing a current problem, I think that we should look at addressing growth in the district and maybe having a committee that focuses on bringing our own students that are here, that are going to Scottsdale or going to Mountainside or going to these other schools, and bringing them back here, getting them invested in our schools and our community. I think there's a lot of ways of doing that. And I think that if we could communicate that to the community, they'd probably receive it better. And especially, we probably shouldn't be showing them development pictures of how many houses are gonna go in there if the district has no play in that, right? Like they should just be like, we're gonna sell the land, we don't know what's gonna happen to it. Because I think that 155 number is sticking in people's heads, and that's just scaring them. So those are just my thoughts. I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Alright. Next on the agenda, information and discussion items, starting with further discussion of the potential sale of property. I think we have some information from Dr. Sneed.
Yes, Madam President, members of the governing board and guests, while Krista pulls this up, I had shared with you the full summary provided by Nathan and Associates, and that is a Scottsdale-based commercial brokerage company that you may recall they did a very similar summary for us back in 2016. So they updated that, and I will state publicly how much I appreciate the work that they did. It was just give them a call and they said, yep, we're on it. And they updated all of that information for us, and I've only selected a few things to share here tonight. You've seen the deeper background. So we've talked about where these are located and other things. So the information I'm sharing here is the updated specific on the valuation of the property. The Hawk site, they have a description there, it's closer to downtown. They think it's a very viable, desirable property to be developed. They, in each of these properties, talk about, they would need to better understand any cut and fill requirements that are there. And so they just base this on their best understanding of each of these properties as they're able to from information available. But bottom line with that Hawk property is they see that as 10 to 12 viable lots, the range of value on it 1.4 million to 1.62 million.
I just want to ask a question before we move on to that, and it's not particular to this one.
Yes.
Just the information regarding how the lots are zoned and the number of lots that a
Yes.
property is zoned for is
Yes.
public information.
Correct.
Correct. So when the district says, according to how this property is zoned, there's the potential that there could be this many lots sold, we're not saying that because we're trying to get 155 houses on a piece of property. We're just relaying public information.
Correct.
And then we have tried to ensure that we have caveated that to say our understanding based on the slope of the land and easements and other factors are that X number of houses could be actually feasibly put on a property.
Almost correct, and that we're not saying that at all. I'm relying on Nathan and Associates who are professionals in this field and experts to say that.
True.
I have
That's
no clue.
From other sources.
And a lot of that information came from our joint meeting with the town, and planning and zoning. That's where a lot of that information came from that was relayed to us. We are just relaying to them.
So I just want to clarify that we're not saying, yes, go build 155 houses. We're just relaying, this is the factual of how the land is laid out and how many lots could be available. And then also trying to provide the context of what would realistically be possible based on information that the town and others have shared with us.
Correct.
Yeah, and what I primarily wish to convey this evening to you is the valuations. We speculated, talked about, et cetera, what they might be. This is a 2-week-old, less than that valuation date, and it's a broker opinion of value. It's not an appraisal, so that number could still change. But they're a very credible company that's been doing this for a long time, and I wanted you to tonight have an understanding of the range of what these values are worth based on a professional estimate of that. So this slide gets to the Aspen site, and again, for the benefit of both the board and the audience, the text of all of this is provided by Nathan and Associates. It's not edited and editorialized by anyone here in the district. So they estimate the value of that site to be between $2.8 and $3.15 million for the Aspen site. And then the El Lago site that has definitely gotten the most attention, and they acknowledge the effects of drainage, hillside conditions, et cetera. But their revised best guess is that there could be 40 to 45 buildable lots, and the value of that land as is somewhere between 5.6 and $6,075,000. Now I do want to point something out. Dana pointed out to me in the information I had shared with you, they had that listed as R18 and it really is R10. And I have just emailed them before coming over. Every other document they've ever done related to this property always had it identified as R10, so I suspect it was just an error on their part. But I did ask them to point it out that it's at R18 when it really is R10, and to learn if that does affect the valuation that they have. But I suspect it was an error on their part.
And make sure it's R110, because R10 is multifamily.
Yeah.
So it's R110, and R118, and R130.
Yeah. So the combined range based on their broker's opinion of value is between $9.8 and $10.845 million for the property going, and that's based on those low estimates on each property and the high estimate.
We skip over the Hawk site.
Excuse me?
That was the first one.
First one? Okay, sorry.
Yeah. So again, I wanted you guys to have a more informed view of how much money we're potentially talking about as the value in those lands if they were sold. And then just a reminder for everyone, the use of the proceeds, you can reduce bond indebtedness, you can use funds to purchase additional school sites, which I think fair to say we have no interest in that. And then you can use funds for capital improvements to existing schools. So you can't use it for staffing, salary programs, those sorts of things. It's essentially the same use of proceeds as you get from a bond. So that was really all I wanted to share with you tonight, focusing on the valuations, but I welcome any questions or conversations you wish to have on this topic.
So I have two,
Yeah, go right ahead.
two comments. One, correct, you can only use it for capital improvements, but repairs that we have to do on the school that come out of M&O can be, that capital money can be used for it, and then that frees up M&O to be able to do other things.
Correct.
Right. So while yes, essentially we can't pay teachers with it, it frees up money that we pay for repairs that takes away from our teachers. And the other thing is that, back to a comment that was made regarding the NPOA and that they can't just divide the parcels, that's incorrect, because I actually talked to the NPOA today. And it has to go through a variance hearing. And so there's no guarantee that it can be divided, but that's under the NPOA and planning and zoning. There's nothing that actually says you can't do it. What it says is that you have to go through the proper channels. So any developer, if we sold the land, because it's under NPOA jurisdiction, just like anybody's house, it's obviously disclosed because the title company wouldn't not disclose it. And they would, in that disclosure, it would say that they would have to go through a variance hearing. So that's all disclosed, but there's nothing that says you can't divide those properties. So that was my two comments.
Yes.
The interesting thing about these is that we're looking at a developed lot somewhere in the neighborhood of $350,000 to $400,000, which then means you're going to have housing that, when you add the cost of construction at $200 to $150 a square foot these days, we're talking almost $1 million homes on the same footprint as the homes around them. I know I lived on a lot 40 years ago. I would love to have my house now. I'm not saying they're all worth $1 million, but they're all going to be north of 800 at least if they try to sell in the near future. The cost of developing all those parcels, this is Fountain Hills, not Fountain Flats. So there's a lot of hillside ordinance issues that all of our lots, other than maybe the Aspen site because it's flats, but the Hawk and the Lago site are hindered in the number of lots that can be built by the wash. You cannot build in a wash in Fountain Hill. That's been established back in the 90s. Obviously, the drainage issue is the reason for it as well. But the cut and fill, you can only cut 10 feet and you can fill 10 feet. So that's why hillside development all over town, the roads are on top of the hill. And to develop the road width, they scraped it and poured it over the side, which gave a 10-foot fill, and that's where most of the houses in Fountain Hills are built, except for yours.
Mine's on flat.
Yeah.
The Washington.
So, it's interesting to see that somebody who buys it much like the state land north of us, the prohibitive thing there was the cost of the land. It's gonna be, just to develop it, it's gonna be upwards of $400,000, which means, again, you're talking $1 million homes. There's a market for it, but it's certainly not the market that's selling like hotcakes today. So I don't know that those numbers, in long story short, are maybe a little optimistic. I would say, from a real conservative standpoint, if we walked away with half of that money in our checking account, we'd be about where I think we would be. The rest of it is going to go to other places, plus the fact that I don't think we're going to get that kind of money for it.
And there's no guaranteed timetable as
No.
far as how long it
That's
takes
correct.
to sell the land and receive the proceeds from the sale of the land and all of that. So even if we got approval to sell the land, it would be then November 30th that land is sold and we have money in our bank account. Any other comments or discussion?
And I agree with Dana that I looked in the assessor's office today and looked at what prices were back in 2016 when the first, when we first got evaluations. I believe that was from Nathan Associates too. I looked at those evaluations compared to what we're at now, and they're not quite double, but they're close. So basically, you know, there's 72 acres. So, you know, at 72 acres, even if you sold it for $100,000 an acre, that's 7.2 million. It probably isn't going to give us the money that we're really looking for. So, because our needs are so much greater than that. And like you said, it's not instant money. Just because it goes on the ballot, we don't know what January is going to bring. And so property values may have decreased, although no realtors think that's going to happen. But still, you know, it brings a lot of issues and probably not the funds that we need to move forward to do the things that need done right now.
Even if the property values don't decrease, the pace of the market may change with the changing mortgage rates that are coming down the pipeline.
That's correct. And any developer that does buy it, you know, Stiles is correct, is going to have to go through a series of rigmarole to be able to build on it. Not that it can't happen, but it's not as easy if they just bought flat parcels of land.
And to your point, there's a lot of flat parcels of land in the valley. You know, I moved here 40 years ago because it wasn't flat. But that's the bad news. The housing prices out here are one of the highest in the valley. And that may not be as high as they are now, but in comparison to the rest of the valley, it's like this. So we're always going to be the high end. And, you know, if you've got a developer's mind, you're going to go where the most value is for your business, and it might not be Bucktown. So even if we have the ability to sell it, it might be a decade before it makes any sense for us to get a buyer. So a lot of unknowns, but as we're talking tonight, the first thing that has to happen is we have to get the people in Bucktown to give us the opportunity to sell it. That doesn't guarantee it's ever going to sell.
Any more discussion on this topic?
No, but there was a lot of good discussion going on.
Okay, we'll move on to bond proposals. Dr.
While Krista pulls this up, the Stiefel people attended a study session we had back, I believe that's in February. And I want to thank them as well for, after our last board meeting, our study session, when I asked what additional information you would like in order to be informed for this decision, said information about bonds. And I called Stiefel, and they were on it, and within 24 hours, we had a phone conversation with about 6 or 8 people, and within about 24 hours, I had a document in front of me, and within another 24, we had a conversation with about 5 or 6 people, and they did an immensely detailed job of putting together information that we would need. Again, I've shared with you the detailed PowerPoint that they had provided. It's much more detailed than I was able to digest myself. And so I've boiled down a few of those slides here for you and for discussion and for the public. So to start out with, they have an analysis of property here in Fountain Hills, and if you can't see that well from the audience, the big pieces of the pie on both of those, and it's comparing 21-22 and projected 22-23. The big chunk is residential property by far. I think it's 86+% in both of those things, and that's what the assessed valuation comes from in determining rates on the bonds and the overall value of the property. And this shows tax rates here in town over a several-year period, and you can see they're declining and currently at the lowest rate they've been. 21-22 is on the far right side, and that's everything: primary property tax, override, the bond assessment that's still in place. That's everything. So you see a decrease in the overall tax rate here for our patrons. This is our actual outstanding bond debt. The total is right about $6.7 million. That's the total amount owed, and that just shows kind of like your mortgage payment at home. The interest amount is the brown on top, the blue is the principal, and that shows in these next coming years through 2029 what that payoff looks like, where you get to the last 2 years, it's almost all principal. Really the last 5 years, sizable principal payment versus interest that is being paid up. But that's the debt that we currently have. And important to understand is that there's currently an assessment on our taxpayers for this bond. It's 23 cents per $100 of assessed valuation. So it raises an interesting prospect. Even though the bond money has been collected and it's been spent, the assessment is still in place to pay off the balance of that. So in our first conversation with the folks at Stiefel, I said, let's see what we can do at our current rate of 23 cents per $100 valuation. So we're not talking about an increase in people's taxes. If this rate is in place, it's in place through 2029, what could we do in terms of a bond at maintaining that rate and not going up past it? I was frankly quite surprised when the next conversation we had was this information. And I know it doesn't show well to the audience, but the light blue column on the left is a $10 million bond. The column in the middle is a $20 million bond, and the column on the right in the sort of yellowish color is 10 million going out, not in 2022, but going out in 2023. I didn't ask for that, but they gave it, so we have it there. But what you will see in each of those is the current rate of 23 cents per $100 of assessed valuation is in place for a year, and then it starts decreasing to 22 cents, and it's depending between the 10 and the 20 million. It starts dropping down pretty significantly within 5 years on the $10 million bond and about 10 years on the $20 million bond. But what this means is we could ask voters to approve a bond at either of those levels, and it would not be a tax increase. It would be a continuation of the tax that is in place, and it extends it out over a longer period of time. I was frankly blown away when I saw that possibility. So just to kind of put it in perspective, the first one on the top is the impact of a $10 million bond estimated taxpayers. And it is just based on a $250,000 assessed valuation. I think if you can help me, Krista, I think it's 2174, about 2746 per year. A lot of people in Fountain Hills have more than a $250,000 home. You can double that for 500,000, triple that for 750,000. But even at $1 million valuation, you would be just over $100 a year to the taxpayer. On the commercial property, that's the one in the middle. It's on a $1 million estimated taxation is $176. And on agricultural and vacant property down below, the bottom one you see on a $100,000 valuation, it's $16.48 a year.
Can I ask a question? Do we pay that tax on our vacant property?
No,
We do not. No.
I looked that up. We're exempt here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. So that's on the 10 million. This is a scenario. It's hard for everybody to see. I apologize for the small print. It gets into some pretty detailed stuff that we'll skip here for tonight. And then this breaks down on, if you did the $20 million, again, $250,000 residential valuation is $41.90 per year. Double that for 500,000, triple that for 750, quadruple it. So on $1 million property, you'd be looking at $164 approximately. The impact on the commercial property, $1 million is $268 per year, and on agricultural property, $100,000 is evaluation is about $25 per year. So still a pretty small impact on all levels of property there. And we can skip that one too. And then this is 20 million in 2023, but I know that's a typo. It was 10 million scenario 3. So the numbers you're seeing there, 3883 for $250,000 of assessed valuation. And again, I didn't ask for the third scenario of doing a November election. We were focused on November of 2022. So I haven't paid a lot of attention on that third scenario. So one of the important things that we get from tonight is some direction about what we're going to have on our agenda for June 1st, because this is an example of the type of information that needs to be in the voter information pamphlet. It's detailed for voters to see what's this going to do to your taxes and other stuff. Now, that does not need to be prepared by June 1st, but it starts needing to be prepared shortly thereafter. But that is required information for a voter pamphlet, and breaks it out year by year by year what is the estimation of the tax that the voter would be paying. This is a sample again, but you may recall, and I think our next slide will show our previous two bonds that we've had, where you have general categories that need to be identified as far as renovations and repairs, and they do make separate administrative, so anything done on the district office or this building here fall into that category, as does the transportation warehouse, technically fall into the administrative category. So if you go to the next slide, Krista, these are samples of what we did November 2006 bond and November 2013 bond. And you know, you see safety and security, renovations, improvements to school sites. So again, this doesn't have to be prepared by June 1st, but if the decision is made to call for an election for a bond, then we need to get rolling. And we've been rolling and preparing some things, but not detailed, because again, it doesn't matter whether it's 10 million or 20 million that we're going after. But then this too is included as part of that ballot information. So voters have a chance to see this is what the district is considering spending this money And this is that general calendar for the November election. I don't think there's anything new there, and we don't have to jump in real deep, but the big one, we've got that June 11th is the cutoff date for Maricopa County, with our schedule. June 1st is effectively the date that if we're going to call for election on anything, that's when we need to do it. And then after that, you know, all those things fall into place for submitting the signed election resolutions and the public pamphlet information, all of that stuff starts falling in place. But those are hard timelines that need to be met, and our most important one, of course, is the one that's right ahead of us. And that's it. So again, welcome any questions and discussions, but again, ultimately, I would like to hear from you what you want. That Stiefel will work with Gus Rosenfeld to provide the specific language that would need to be in a motion for any of these things, including if we go out again for district additional assistance, if we were to go out for a bond, or if we go to the land sale. They have drafts of things working on those already, but they would finalize that, and that conversation really needs to take place between them tomorrow, so they can finalize that language that we could have to put on the agenda for board action on the 1st.
Yes, Mr. Zucker.
A couple things. We can't pay off our existing bonds with new ones. I'm not mistaken, right?
That is factored into the cost that you see.
Okay, so, but the payments of those existing bonds are factored into what your numbers.
Correct. Yep.
So our net would be 10 million.
Yes.
Because a lot of individuals are kind of refinancing their homes, and you know, they got 10 years left, they stretch it out to another 20 years, and they can reduce their payments, expecting them to also all the time. And then secondly, if we go to a bond election, we have to be quite specific in how we use that money, as you said. When does that have to be established?
That would have to be, I believe it's in the July timeline of submitting publicly.
The pamphlet?
Yes.
Okay, so.
Yeah. We would prepare for you for next week a general outline. Conversations that we've been having focused primarily on renovations and building upgrades are the biggest things. Might be a little bit in vehicles and transportation, but big thing is the sites, and especially in the context of the conversations we've been having with the possible consolidation. There are things we would have to do related to that, and then there are things that it would really be great to do so that we have two, you know, state-of-the-art, wonderful schools that everybody is proud as can be to walk in the door of.
So, and the bond money, we haven't talked about using any of it for technology.
No, we could. You know, we've had that in before, but in the past, the DAA has been the primary funding for technology needs for the district.
And we're not gonna have that next year.
We're not gonna have that next year.
And so the need for that, $750,000, which we've had since day one, is what we would use in addition to these other capital needs to do the technology and the soft capital desks.
Yeah, Mrs. Reed in her meeting today summarized it really pretty nicely that, you know, the DAA is the immediate need that we have for technology, curriculum, software, those things that we need to provide for our students and staff so that we're able to do the job that we're supposed to do. The bond is really those bigger projects, the bathroom renovations, the new roofs if we don't get them done through the state facility board. You know, we've talked in our facilities advisory group of the envelopes of both buildings really need to be done, windows, doors, sealing the block, the rooftops, inside bathroom renovations at some sites, and all of those kinds of things.
Well, technology used to be depreciable. Now it can be currently written off because things don't last that long. Technology, your software purchase lasts for more than 2 years before you have to do it again. It's standard. So that's why depreciation in our world, depreciation doesn't mean much. But in comparison to the business world, that is. In hardware, the life of a computer is measured in less than 5 years. Not because it doesn't work, it's still right. When I was 30 years old, it still works, but it's obsolete in terms of its use. So, I just think we have to make sure that people understand that the DAA funding, or the capital override, it doesn't go away on these other alternative sources of funding. The need is still there for a specific use that we need to educate students.
It's our living expenses. That's what I had said earlier today.
Yeah, and that would be a critical part of the resolution itself, and then in the work that goes into, while employees of the district are not able to advocate for or against a district resolution of any sort, non-employees are, and we have plenty of advocates in the community, and in the past, we've had a political action committee that has been in place to, for that purpose of carrying the positive message forward. And I think those would absolutely be essential to have in place this time around, and then really spell out what is it that the district additional assistance does for you, and what is it that the bond does for you, and be very clear about the advantages of both. And so one of the things with bonds, they've been a relatively easy thing to pass, because there's nothing better for a neighborhood, there's nothing better for a community than a good school facility that looks good and operates well and, does good things inside of it. It's good for property values. So good schools are good for neighborhoods, good for communities.
And we're matching the long-term investment with long-term assets.
Yeah, and I'm sorry for talking so much.
You're paid for it. so-
We were,
It's very
it's a blend of our facilities advisory committee. The middle school still seems new to me. It's 20 years old. And we're starting to see those life cycle things of the roof out there, the air conditioning. We've got I believe there's 6 small units out in the gymnasium that we're holding them together with baling wire and duct tape until school's out on Thursday. They need to be replaced, and it's a big project, and it's a big job. But we're seeing a lot of those things between that side and this side, obviously. So there are some very, very real capital needs that, for those of you who were here at our last governing board meeting and we had the revised budget, we've got approximately $3 million, 3.2 in our capital funds right now. And that's a good amount of money. And that will get us to repair those air conditioning units over there, and we'll still have money to work. But it's not enough to do these other things that we're talking about. We would have to put some bathrooms in if we do the consolidation. We would have to change fixtures to the smaller ones. These 2 buildings over here, F and G, if we move the middle school over there, they need an entire paint job from top to bottom. Ceilings need to be replaced in about 50% of the classrooms. Doors and windows.
Carpets, I was
Carpets,
thinking carpets, for sure,
There's some,
But it is beautiful, it's beautiful, beautiful space.
It is.
Wide hallways, light, a lot of natural light. It's, you walk in and you know that it could,
It could be fantastic.
Yeah.
it could be fantastic.
Yeah.
There's
so
no
we're just,
self-service, there's zero self-service.
zero self-service in my office.
Right,
Try
right.
to-
There's no self-service anywhere here.
Very good for teachers, but, I think that we have to be realistic about our needs. We're not asking for nice to haves. Anyone who is questioning whether we need some of these things should walk through our bathrooms at the high school, in our locker rooms, and
Stand in the classroom when it's raining.
yeah, these are not just nice to haves, and it's not for lack of maintenance. These are old buildings. Everyone who owns a home knows you'll need a new roof someday. You need new toilets someday. You usually replace your countertops at some point. These are not just nice to haves. These are things that are needed.
And these are,
Our learning
when you think about it, I know they're not commercial spaces, but if you think about how they calculate usage of commercial spaces, the traffic that we get through these spaces are like commercial spaces, right? And so carpet only lasts so long in spaces that are trafficked that much. Even tile only lasts so long in spaces that are trafficked that much.
So I replaced the carpet in my kids' room 6 years ago, and it already has to go. So those children live in my house, and they've been in college the last 3 years, so.
And we have children at school 6 hours a day. We have
Right.
teachers at school probably 8 to 10 hours a day, and staff, and, you know, it's wear and tear. Nothing should be a surprise. So, you know, I'm always surprised that people are surprised we need these things. I mean, you need them, yeah, and it just, you know, and we need to be responsible in how we ask for this money and how we use this money.
Well, and that's one of the questions that's been asked to me is, okay, so we got to this position, like, what are we going to do to get out of this position, and then what are we going to do to prevent this position? So, you know, in the 10 years I've been on the board, and Dana can speak even farther back, like, you know, we've gone out for a bond, but it's always kind of like, okay, we're only gonna ask for this much money and just take care of like this project. And so that's where, you know, I kind of like looking at the bigger picture, and I know, you know, 20 million, it's like, oh my gosh, but I've been sitting in this facilities use committee and looking at all the needs between now and the next 10 years.
Yeah,
And
the
it's
bill
the
just keeps adding up and
must-haves,
adding up
the
and
should-haves, and you're gonna, you know, eventually get to. So, you know, that's what I'm kind of hoping is that if we could pass a bond, and while that number seems really high, we do have buildings that are large. I mean, you know, the square footage, I could pull it out, but I mean, McDowell Mountain alone is 77,000 square feet, you know, or the middle school, 77,000. No, I think it was McDowell Mountain, 77,000 square feet. You know, when you look at the cost per square footage on maintenance, you know, we're actually not very high. We are very conservative. So I'm hoping that if we could pass a bond and actually just take care of stuff, that yes, then the ongoing maintenance, you know, hopefully our capital override passes, because like I said in the facilities use committee, that's not like fun money. It's not like, hey, let's do this project. It's like, hey, if this doesn't pass, our kids aren't getting textbooks. They're not gonna have a desk.
Or working Chromebooks, we've switched over to one-on-one. And while Tana said, you know, the useful life of some devices might be 5 years, they become outdated because of technology changes. The truth is, Chromebooks with kids, many of them don't even last the whole year. We're
No.
replacing multiple times in a year.
I've been through 3 Chromebooks with 1 child. Thankfully, I was smart enough to get the insurance plan. It's just, you know,
So for us,
have
as a
kids,
district,
you
just
just
to
have,
come up
yeah.
with one-to-one technology, I mean, the first year alone, I think we replaced well over half of the Chromebooks that we had bought the year prior.
Right,
Because
and we
even when
didn't have
they came
insurance
back-
then,
Yeah.
because it was COVID, and it was like, hurry up and just get these kids back online.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I use QuickBooks for our business. My QuickBooks was 2019. At the beginning of this year, I got a message from QuickBooks that said, you have till May 30th to upgrade, or you're not gonna be able to process payroll. I'm like, it's only 3 years old. Like, what? You know, and now they've gone to subscription, so you have to pay every year. But that's a whole different story. But yeah, it's, you know, these are things. So while 20 million, you know, people are like, oh my gosh, why does the school need $20 million? Well, if your house is 20 years old, you know, I mean, the roof alone on somebody's house right now is $10,000, and I only have 2,000 square feet. So I don't have, you know, 100,000 square feet of roofs to take care of, so whatever the number is.
Well, so specific to that, the Gordian report, which has been shared here and it's been shared publicly at the board meetings and it's been shared in our facilities advisory committee. I think the total on that was 27.9 million. And it has broken out as priority urgent needs and then less urgent, but all things that need to be done. And a rough estimate of the priority urgent needs, I was reviewing it this afternoon, is right around $14 million, $15 million range. So, and that gets to all these things we're talking about.
Although some of that is that $14 million inclusive of needs at McDowell Mountain.
Yes.
And some of that, even if we would move towards consolidation, that doesn't happen overnight. So some of those repairs would have to happen at McDowell for McDowell to keep its doors open until
Correct.
we had consolidation complete. But there might be some of those expenses that would shift from
Yes.
McDowell to we're now consolidating
Yep.
and needing to put in new bathrooms at the middle school
Yep.
location, et cetera.
Well, and as Patrick mentioned to the facilities use committee, empty buildings are not free buildings. So even if that building's empty, we still have to maintain that building.
Yes.
You know, you can't just turn off the air, close the doors and be like, see ya. So, you know, we're already going through that with the old Four Peaks building. Luckily, we have some rentals in there and there is some offset of cost there. You know, and as Ms. Lamar had pointed out, KDA is moving in there as of June 1st, so there are some renters. Unfortunately, that makes the district, Patrick, a landlord. So, which isn't great, but yeah, just if we consolidate McDowell, it doesn't mean that there's nothing that's gonna ever have to be done with McDowell again. We're still gonna have to maintain that building. And I pulled out my facility use thing, and we have 472,564 square feet of buildings that the district maintains. So that's a lot of square footage.
And just, you know, tile, carpet, paint, the envelopes.
That does not
And
include
cool
this.
all of it.
And, yeah.
Yeah, it
does
doesn't
not
include the
include
learning center.
Yeah.
Yeah, and cool all that. So all those AC units that we need. So, and as Patrick said, the newest building is the middle school and that's 20 years old.
Are we looking at any improvements in security? You know, about 2 up
Yes.
when I saw the news.
Yes.
Oh, that's terrible.
I think, you know, in this facility here, you know, north of 100 doors.
Yeah.
And even though we have it gated and so forth, there's always been a problem with opening the doors. And when they're locked, and when they're not, and they don't always meet the schedule of the day. And then you start looking at the other facilities with that square footage. Most schools are looking at card locks now.
We're looking at it, it's a matter of being able to afford it.
Yeah, but to me, especially after the events of today, security has to be moved up higher in my priority list.
Yeah, there's a couple of specific things being looked at, and it would dovetail nicely into the consolidation plan at McDowell Mountain, or excuse me, at the middle school. Where currently, when you come up from, if you're in the bus lane in the back, come off of Fountain Hills Boulevard through that little back route, you know, the back of that building, I wouldn't want to walk through there because of probably rattlesnakes and other things, but you can walk to the windows of the whole wing of classes there. And we've already had some discussions about putting security fencing around from the one corner up around to where that court is and reconfiguration of that court for a possible playground area. So there's some things there that need to be done. There's still some things on the high school campus that could and should be done. The conversation of keyless card entry locks ideally should be done everywhere. And it's not just a security issue on that. On the immediate sense, it's also, you know, you lose your card, no big deal. Deactivate it, give you a new card, versus having keys floating around when someone might lose them and other things.
The
So,
key you have is worth $15,000.
I know, I was gonna say, those keys
Yeah.
are dang expensive.
Yeah.
So we had the Homeland Security do an assessment years ago.
Yeah.
That's how we ended up with the big boulders in front of doors and
Yeah, the
McDowell Mountain got
ballistic
reconfigured
slabs.
and stuff. Are there still items on that report that we weren't able to move forward with because we didn't have the money?
yeah, I think there was some perimeter fencing on this campus and the perimeter fencing at the middle school that I'm talking about.
Would it behoove us to have them do another study?
Yes, they do that in conjunction with the sheriff's office, and they've been great about doing that.
That's probably a good, now's probably a good time to do that assessment if we're talking about consolidating schools and like where certain kids are gonna be in schools, that we should have them do another assessment
And to understand the costs for.
right, again, it's more money, so, yeah.
So I have one other thing for your consideration in this. So I had a lengthy conversation over, multiple lengthy conversations with Paul Euland from Primary Consultants, who many of you probably know. And, you know, Paul's been around on particularly school-related elections, bonds, override, et cetera. And one of the conversations we had was his opinion based on his experience of, you know, DAA and a bond, DAA and the land sale, DAA and all three or whatever,
Right.
and he was very certain to encourage, don't mix the bond and the land sale.
No.
On the same ballot issue.
No.
Whether it's DAA and a bond, DAA and a land sale, do not mix the other ones just because it's convoluted.
Well, and I agree with what Stifles said the night they were here, is that you get voter burnout. If you put too many things on a ballot, people just tend to vote no on everything. I mean, it's not like, oh, there's so many things, let me just vote yes.
Yeah.
You tend to vote no. So I agree that you gotta pick two. And the DAA, the override is a no-brainer because that, again, is our living expenses. It's not fun money. Nothing's fun money at this point because we have to fix everything, but it's not even money that we can live without.
Which I think it bears stating that the reason why we can't live without it is because education in Arizona at a base level doesn't
not
get
funded.
funded sufficiently. So then we are allowed to go out for overrides, but those overrides are set at a high-end limit. So it's not like we get to shoot for the moon and say 100, give us a 100% override of the budget that we get from the state. It's
I think the highest is 15%, Patrick?
Yes,
15, yeah.
15%.
that's M&O.
It's in
No, that's a no.
the cap or DAA is in the second.
Okay, so
And
Seven
we-
fifty.
We
Seven
initially said
fifty,
it's 750,000, been that way since the first day. So having a discussion about what we put on the ballot if we do June 1st. Personally, I think we need the money now. And I think, the land is always going to be there. I tend to think the bond right now gives us the ability to do the moves we have to make sure our facility usage is where it should be, that students have a safe environment in which to learn.
there's hopefully an exciting environment for
Yeah,
to learn.
all that, I agree. But in the rawness of things, when it
Yes.
comes to finances, we've got the ability to, potentially, our bonding limits are good because we pay down our existing debt, so I don't think that's gonna be an issue if we go to the $20 million bond. We're not gonna be up against our revenue control limit.
No, the issue would be you're having to raise taxes on.
Yeah. I mean, but legally, there's no reason that we couldn't go for the.
No, it was a ridiculously high number
Yeah.
of our bonding capacity, like $200 million or something like that.
There was a time when that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
So whether it's 10 million, that's a decision we have to make before June 1st, which is like a week and a half away, or less. We can have a second bond election, I think they were alluding to with that third column, a few years down the road.
That third column was in lieu of going to 2022, going to 2021.
Right. And that was for the 20.
Well, you think,
One was
you
10,
thought
one
that
was
was a
20.
typo, right?
Yeah,
That it
because
was
I
10
believe
million.
on the detailed document, it was
Okay.
10 million as it's laid
Right.
out.
So 10 million gets us beyond our current needs.
Not by much.
Not by much.
Not,
Not
we're gonna
really,
consolidate.
because
And so it doesn't have to be 10
it
or
was
20.
14 million
It
for
could be
the,
14 million.
It could,
Could be any number that we.
Well, according to
Anything-
Oregon, we need 27 million. So
Well, in the next,
for everything
Yeah.
in the next 10 years, but that's what residents are asking is like, well, why don't you just fix what needs fixed and then maintain it as opposed to, hey, we need more money, hey, we need more money, hey, we need more money. So that's where it becomes an issue.
Yeah.
The reality is some people are gonna vote no, no matter what.
That's right.
So it's convincing people the value in voting yes, and being clear about it, so people don't
Providing
get
the
confused.
real
And,
details.
yeah, showing, the detail. I mean, most of us live on fixed incomes if you are a salaried employee, unless you own a business, so we all know what
And
it's
we live
like
on
to have to
knowing.
pay taxes, yes.
don't know what it is.
And you're right, I mean, the bottom line is Arizona has a $3.8 billion surplus, and yet there is no discussion of any of that trickling down to the schools. So unfortunately, living in a community like this, we have to ask our community to support us, because we can't.
And in all
pull money
fairness,
from the state.
FHUSD has one of the lowest debts if you look at districts across the state. Like, we have done a good job not taking on a lot, and what we do take on that we've been paying off. So that's why our bond rating is so high, and we've done a good job at that, so.
Yeah, and so to be clear, we can, anything, you know, the $10 million scenario and $20 million scenario both are demonstrated to show at the current rate of 23 cents per $100 assessed valuation. And the difference is that assessed rate decreases quicker on the 10 million and it terminates quicker than it does on the 25, or excuse me, the 20. But you could go in the middle somewhere as well, maintaining that same 23 cent per $100 valuation. And it would decrease somewhere in the middle of how it's decreasing currently and would terminate, you know, in the middle where.
Do we know what the timeline is for, like, you know, for paying it off?
Yeah, so I think on the 20 million, I think it's 40 years. Is that correct?
And, you know, 40 years? I don't think you can do it.
Is this it? Keep going. Go to the colored. So.
48, 49? 2048, 49?
Yeah.
So that's 20
So
years.
that's 20 years.
And that's the
Yeah.
maximum, I think,
Yeah,
that you can do.
25.
With 25, yeah. So my point is, these are investments in our assets that need to be maintained with good maintenance, like roads and anything else in the world. They'll last that long. And so it's a good investment. It would be in a household, if you're doing the things that you need to do to keep your roof from leaking in over 20 years. You still have to maintain it every year. And the same thing with our roads in town. They'll last 40 years if you spend the money to maintain them. If you don't, you end up with what we have. So I think we're in that same boat with our buildings.
I don't think that I think we need to be careful there. I don't want to, we've had staff that have worked hard at keeping our buildings.
Right,
no,
but they're just,
But they only have what we've given to
they've
them.
lasted through their life expectancy,
They
and,
have,
you know,
yes.
like
In
Patrick
part, they
said.
probably exceeded what could be
Right.
expected.
Because of the care.
And that's, at
Yeah.
some point, you have to start over. You start over with a new AC unit, you start over with a, new roof, you start over with new paint, whatever. You have to start over at some point, and we're at that point where we have to start over. But, my hope is that if the bond would pass and we could fix these things, like replace the air conditioning units and stuff like that, then the money that we do get from like the capital override and our M&O money, it would go to maintaining those things and keeping them going. But again, in 20 years, people are gonna be having the same conversation. So, I mean, it just, I'm
Well,
getting
and
new
too,
windows. My
I
house was
mean-
built in 95, so.
And I mean, that's the thing too, is things have come a long way in terms of energy efficiency.
Mhm.
Right.
So, looking at ways to invest now that saves money down the road is what.
And hopefully it cuts our utility expenses. If it cuts our utility expenses, that frees up more money for teacher salaries, and it's a domino effect.
And you never know about unexpected expenses. And we go to the fire alarm system. That wasn't even on the report. Well, maybe it was, I don't know. But it wasn't, and all of a sudden we have a $50,000 bill of something that is a critical need. So, we can't, this isn't a situation where you live paycheck to paycheck. Like, you have to have money set aside just in case you have those unexpected expenses. So,
Yeah, and those unexpected expenses aren't $5,000.
No,
They're
it's not like
hundred
you're,
thousand,
car breaking down,
150,000.
even like a bus breaking down. It's not a $99 battery. It's, so
And
I
that's,
think we need to be clear about that.
School Facilities Board has done a good job, and our staff has done a good job in submitting requests and getting some of these things. I consider School Facilities Board like your warranty company, like a home warranty.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll replace it, sometimes they won't. But, they don't even open their submissions until July 1st. So, and then John has a list that he's gonna submit, doesn't mean that they'll get approved. And it doesn't even say, okay, it opens July 1st and by July 15th, you'll have an answer. So again, some things
March.
can't wait, we have to fix them. Our teachers can't get rained on, they have to have air conditioning. I mean, there are things that need done.
And again, back to the leaky ceilings, and you're worried about mold mitigation and all of these other things that come along with it. And I think that, again, that message needs to be, these things are being done to save us money in the long run as well.
And these conversations that we're having, every household in the country has these same discussions among themselves.
I'm sure of that.
As you've all said, you know, what do we do about the air conditioner? It's gonna cost $7,000. Where are we gonna get $7,000? It wasn't built into our budget. It happens. And we're just on a bigger scale, but exactly the same. But the town is going through the same problems with the roads, with the air buildings. It's just physical things. We're on. And then, as we said many times over the years, if you're an empty nester, your things will last longer than if you've got 3 little kids running.
Right?
And we've got,
That's what I hear.
1,200 of them.
That's why I'm getting ready to replace my floors, because they move.
Your floors move?
No, my children.
Oh, that's true.
One's out for, on her own now. The other one, he's back and forth, so it's a little sketchy there, but he only has one room. So.
So we got some thinking to do between now and a week from now.
Now,
June 1st.
To June 1st.
Well,
Do
we
we,
got some thinking to do sooner than that.
yeah, because we wanted to go back
Well, yes.
Yeah.
by tomorrow so that they could start working on language for us in the
Yeah.
meeting
So-
to make a motion. I think one of the things that we also need to ask, because they've given us specific scenarios, do we want to see, like if we went for 20 million, but we didn't want the duration of the bond to be as long, what that would look like? Because I feel like that's kind of the in-between area that we don't have represented for us yet.
Well, nor do we have 15 million instead of 20. I think 15 million covers
Yeah,
the
but
Guardian report.
I feel like
No,
this.
it covers the urgent needs.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what I'm saying.
on Guardian.
It doesn't
But
cover
we're putting
the
ourselves
whole
back in that
report.
same situation.
I know, just
And,
throwing numbers out.
And we have to pay off our debt, so it's not 20 million, it's 10 million.
No, no.
It's
It's a continuation.
Continuation.
So but the bond doesn't pay off debt. The only thing that would pay off debt is selling the land.
But we're not raising taxes.
No, it's a continuation of the debt. It's like if you refinanced your house. It just, if you, right now you owe 10 more years and you refinanced your house and you're like, hey, I'm gonna do a 30 years so that my payments stay, then, I'm taking that money out and I want my payment to stay the same. So it's just extending it.
Yeah, personally, if the 20 million is within our abilities, which seems to be, as you said, then that's gonna do a better job of getting into that next level of need. But
And having some longer term, because if we did 10, that money would be gone.
It's
It'd be
gone,
gone.
It's gone,
Right.
In a
right.
year.
Yeah, I think it's a minimum of 15, but I think if you go out for 15, we could go out for anything and it may or may not pass, so we may be having other discussions come January, but hopefully not. But I just feel like if you go out for the minimal, that, like, the absolute have to fix this right now, and nothing that's projected for, the consolidation or, anything that is on its way out, I think you and I won't be here, and they won't be either, but in another 5 years, they're gonna be having the same
So
conversation.
what would you recommend?
I would recommend 20.
Yeah, I see that too.
I mean, it keeps everything consistent. People are gonna get confused, regardless. So let's, this is a consistent 22 cents, stays the same.
23, then it
23,
starts
sorry.
going down.
Right.
In the
23.
second year, it starts going down.
Right.
As we decided to have for the last whatever.
But then I think the other question is, do we want, as a district, to be in the position of, that extending out until here it's 2047 to 2048 for the 20 million that gets voted on this November if it passes, right?
But we
I
would have to
think we have that.
increase, we'd have to
If you
increase the
shorten that, it
tax
Would
increases
we
rate.
have to increase the first year, or would we just not drop off in subsequent years as quickly?
No, I think if you shorten it, I think it would increase,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah,
Patrick?
I can get clarification. from that.
Just like it would in your own.
That,
Right.
yeah, you would not need to have a decision about whether the length of term of
Yeah,
this.
okay.
You know, that's something that can get answered by the people who know that. But if the decision is to propose a ballot measure to pass a $20 million bond, that's what I would need to get working with those guys to. The language of the length of time is not going to be in that resolution.
Well, we can't vote on anything.
Yeah,
This is not
this
an
is
This
action.
is scenario
Just
two.
what?
Yeah,
This
it's
is
just
what?
information.
You're just
Yes.
listening.
I need direction
I
of
can-
of what you want.
Yeah, I think the direction is the 20 million without us voting on anything in this
Right.
section, because we can't vote on anything in this section.
And I believe everybody's been supportive of the DAA.
We gotta get
Sitting
through-
here, yes.
We gotta get through this year without it,
Okay.
which is gonna postpone some things anyway. And we wouldn't get the money from a bond election until the following year anyway.
Correct.
So,
July 1.
so we're, we've gotta get through this next school year, any way we can. Hopefully we won't have any major issues.
But that's the, 3 million
Yeah, well,
like in the bank that we have will probably go for some of those
We
things
sure hope
that
so.
the DAA would have covered.
Well, and especially if we look at consolidating a school, because if we want that school to be consolidated by 23-24 school year,
We have to
then
start
those
spending
things
money.
have to happen
Yeah.
basically next summer.
Yeah.
So if they don't happen, then McDowell's gonna stay open for another year, and that's another year of expenses, which, Patrick provided that to the committee today, and, the amount of electricity and cleaning and everything that goes along with it, even though it's not free to close it, it's,
A lot less
it's a lot
to
less
maintain.
than what it
Yeah.
is to maintain it. So, our backup money is going to have to go, to that kind of stuff, or we're gonna have McDowell open for another year.
Yeah, longer than we would like, yes.
Now, are we able to make this, the full report that you sent to us, public? Or
It is
do we
public.
need to wait until there's a vote on something like this?
Excuse me?
Can we make this public, like we made the Gordian report?
You can, I just,
I
there's,
think we should wait till.
Well,
yeah,
I wouldn't
it's
want-
so numbingly detailed.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't want
I would-
anybody to latch on to
I wouldn't put
anything
that on the
that
internet, no.
isn't what we finally vote on.
Right.
Right. So I would wait until we have,
I
this
agree.
is exactly what we are going to request from the voters, so that there is no confusion of data.
Correct. Because we
We've
know what
gone through a
happens.
lot of scenarios. We're gonna have to pick one.
Patrick sent
Yes.
it to me.
So DAA resolution for a $20 million bond.
And not, an election on Sullivan Way.
But that's just information on
Yes.
Yeah,
Just so
well,
we're
that's
clear.
extremely helpful.
There's
And if
no
these
voting.
things- Yeah, and if these things don't pass, then we have
Back
another
again.
discussion.
Yeah, it's just, the voting will happen next
November.
Wednesday, right?
No,
Or
I'm
no,
saying.
or
Board
the
vote.
Board
Yeah.
vote is
And
next
then-
Wednesday.
And that puts all that calendar in motion of what we
Right.
need to do to get with the county and have all the materials. And then it would be on the November 5th.
And we have the attendance sheets from all of our meetings, so we know who to contact who will help us.
Well, that's a whole different deal, so, but it needs to be better. And our incoming superintendent, and you've had these before.
Yeah.
And, you will have to have this figured out, so.
We
Well,
have good
And
advisors.
making it really clear in the Fountain Hills Times and all of that, where these items are, because you're right, it can be very overwhelming, but I still think it's important to have it there for the people who want to dig into it. making sure that the public is aware of where these, pieces of information are.
Yeah, I think, I've talked with a number of community people about having a election committee. And, I will no longer be an employee of the district after June 30th, and so I can advocate and intend to advocate. And I've talked to a number of people who want to be involved in that. And
That's
I think
great.
it's just a matter of, we need to get out in front of every group and talk about what's good about it and what's in it for the town. And, it's an election item that you need to go out and sell. So I think
Well, and the
our
sooner
work
the
will be ahead
board
of it.
makes decisions, the sooner the PAC can be created and move forward. So.
Okay, 8 days from now?
Can you be clear about what as school board members we are allowed and not allowed to do in terms of our comments about these issues by law?
Yeah,
'Cause I know
we're
we have
all
restrictions.
able to talk about the facts. So you can talk about what it's gonna cost, you can talk about the impact of taxpayers, you can talk about what you can use money for, all of that. We're not allowed to advocate for it. We're not allowed to say you should do this because this is there. But, I think in the past, when we did the override in 2016, or 2018, I think it was, there were a number of us out talking just about the facts, and the facts were pretty positive. And it was, talk about facts. And so that's what you can do related to both of these, is talk about how's it going to impact people, how's it going to impact schools, what's going to be done with the money, those are that.
But on the other hand, the 5 of us need to be cautious about saying anything, because anyone that goes above and beyond or perceived to go beyond can cancel the election. So the risk is not as great, is huge compared to the reward.
Yes.
It's better to refer them to the political action committee.
Correct.
And, as a governing board member, you cannot sit on the PAC. District employees, anyone who works here cannot use their emails, their district emails for anything political related. And the political action committee can't even meet here, is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, and now, there's one thing important, that employees other than the superintendent can advocate, they just have to advocate on their own time.
Right.
But,
Not on school property and
not
not through
on
their
school
school email.
property, not using school resources.
Right.
And all of that, but a member, anybody else could be on the PAC, they could serve on the PAC, they could go out and advocate to civic groups and other things. They just, can't use district resources to do it.
Correct.
And there's been a ruling that superintendents are always on the job, and so you can't have that separation to go out and advocate, but others can.
Yeah, just want to make that clear to
Yeah.
our audience members
It's
and people
best that
online.
the board just refers them to the PAC.
Yeah, it's not like we're being, defiant, we just are not allowed.
If there isn't any further discussion, we can go ahead and wrap up. Future action, if you'd like to see an item on a future board agenda, please reach out to Krista. Dates of upcoming meetings, our next business meeting is here in the Learning Center on Wednesday, June 1st, starting at 6:30 p.m. And then after that, we have a business meeting on Wednesday, June 29th. That is actually a business meeting plus a work study session that begins at 5 p.m. With that, I move that we adjourn.
Second?
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
And the meeting following that starts at what time?
What meeting?
We're done with our meetings. We've been meeting all day.
No, I said, the meetings in July start at what time?
Oh, they start at 6 o'clock.
6, yeah.
I'm done with meetings.
I'm sorry, yes, no offense, but I got it.
I'm done, I'm good. Too many